You're running, right? All right. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, welcome to the conversation. Of course, I am yours truly, Malachi, and my co host, one of my co hosts, Martin Al-Ameen, is in the house. Of course, we're expecting Sherwin to join us very shortly as well. Tonight, we got an interesting discourse or discussion or conversation. Of course, you can call me, join the conversations because tonight is going to be hot on plus 592-641-0945, or you could call Martin on.
305-713-8595.
All right, and tonight we're supposed to be joined by Mr. Thomas Jason Anderson, and of course, he is a director of the DC based Last Government Watchdog Organization, all right, in New York City. So we're hoping to have him grace our presence right here in the conversation. But before we get into tonight's hot topic, which is all about sanctions, the disclaimer, please, before we
So
get there.
the disclaimers read: the
Yes.
views, opinions, and statements expressed on a conversation are solely those of the individual hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of our advertisers, Majestic Music Radio, Gem Radio, or Gem Network. The content of this show is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Listeners' discretion is advised. Neither the station nor the network assumes any responsibility or liability for the accuracy, completeness, or validity of the information presented. All content is subject to change without prior notice. And of course, as we always like to say, you can Google it.
Google it. Make sure you Google it. Research your information. So I want to kick off tonight's discourse on looking at what the word
Mm.
or what exactly do sanctions mean? Because I think a lot of people, I don't know, they get mixed up, they get it twisted. They don't fully understand what it means, but I advise people you've got one of the best encyclopedias Britannicas in your hands, which is a cell phone, right? Once you own a cell phone, you're supposed to be able to Google, you're supposed to be able to research any bit of information. So let's look at the word sanctions, right? And let's look at what Google describes a sanction as, or what is sanctions described as, right? Sanctions are political and economic measures imposed by countries on international organizations to influence the behavior of a target state or organization. They can include restrictions on trade, economic activities, diplomatic relations, and cultural exchanges. The primary purpose of the sanctions are to protect national security interests, uphold international law, and respond to threats to peace and security. All right? Sanctions can take various forms, such as economic sanctions, trade bans, assets freeze, and arms embargo, are often used to pressure governments to change their policies or actions. All right. So clearly on Google, we have an outline of exactly what sanctions means. All right. So let's get into the discussion about sanctions before we bring our esteemed guests in
Yes.
to the conversation.
So I think it's fair to highlight that just a handful of people, and of course our audience is Guyanese based, right? But
Yeah.
you don't have to be in Guyana as long as you're Guyanese. We like to speak to you and represent on your behalf for the most part, right?
Yeah.
As I would like to say, bring you the information where it's credible to its finest. right?
Yeah.
So was it a year and change ago? Let's say just within
Yeah.
a year and
Yeah.
a half, just close to 2 years, somebody was sanctioned, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
A group of individuals. And of course, these information would have came out first um, by the Reuters, right? Not the
Hmm.
sanctions directly, but the allegations of bad business and bad dealings and corruption highlight within the
Yes.
country, right?
Correct.
But I
Hmm.
think more so, information came out on everybody remembers the Sue story in Guyana, right?
Hmm.
With the vice president.
Correct.
And that came out on Vice News. So for
Mhm.
quite some time, journalists like myself, right, who's overseas based, some Guyanese, of course, some not Guyanese, but journalists in general would have been putting in the work because of the oil boom that we have in beautiful Guyana.
Mhm.
Everybody is paying attention,
Of
right?
course.
And
Of
because
course.
everybody been paying attention, once you start looking into a country, especially from the foreign perspective, you're looking at, yeah, investment, money making, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you're looking to see how you could make money in general. So
Hmm.
once people start doing that, of course, once you get in on the ground and you start talking to some people, corruption comes along. That was one of the first things, especially in the area of business. Corruption comes along. But just the word itself, right, does make some people tremble, but it also makes some people excited. Now,
Mm.
we've all seen the Jagdio saga that played out and what happened with the Vice News and the reporter and so on. I mentioned that because I wanted people to realize things didn't just start happening with the Mohammeds. Journalists like myself have been putting in the work. We have been doing the research. We have
Mm.
been hearing and seeing things. And our job is to verify what is factual, right?
And
And
what's
what is
not.
not.
Correct.
And it's important to be a credible journalist, one who is not tied to politics, one who is not tied in corruption, right? I
Mm.
think some of the most incredible and valuable qualities a journalist could have is the credibility, the morals, values, standards, them things about. And once I think as a journalist, the most important part is to never give up your source. Even if you're in court, you
So
never give up
let's
your
kind of
source.
cut to the chase with all of this Vice News stuff because the
Uh-huh.
relevance to that and all about sanctions
Correct.
doesn't really correlate. We're dealing with a specific thing tonight, which deals with sanctions. Now,
Uh-huh.
Vice News report on Barrett Jagdeo did not talk anything about sanctions.
No,
That
I
had nothing
mentioned
to do with
that to show the people,
sanctions.
the population, the outside world didn't just start looking at Mohammed, because the story that's going around today is that Guyana government brought sanctions on the Mohammed. So I
Mhm.
mentioned that to show members of the Guyana government have also been under scrutiny.
Well, let's put it like this. Vice News report would have had to be verified
Uh-huh.
by, let's say, an American law enforcement organization, which would have then given them credence or credibility.
Uh-huh.
So they're them saying that Barrett was involved in stuff that they cannot bring the evidence to is a waste of time because
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows. Well, some people know that the vice president, after leaving presidency of Guyana, was hired as the chairman of the Caribbean Basin Initiative, which is the IMF, all right, which is an international body, which you would have to go through a lot of scrutiny in order to be the head of that, because what you're responsible for is ensuring that the Caribbean and Latin America gets funding and stuff like that, which passes through the chairman. So that bit of information by Vice News is, in my estimation, is not credible, because I haven't seen any follow-up, and I haven't seen a law enforcement agency point directly to that source and say, well, what they were saying has any form of credence. Now, let's go back to the issue of sanctions, because really the focus of tonight should be on the sanctions and who are the persons sanctioned in Guyana. Now,
Mm-hmm.
we have first, based on the Reuters report, we have the Mohammed family, his father and Azruddin Mohammed, who have been sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department, OFAC, regarding their gold smuggling, their ties to drug smuggling as well. Also, their ties to Islamic terrorist groups. So those are three things which were outlined in that report. And I'm wondering, I'm not looking at it from a political standpoint, because I'm least interested in the politicking of the whole situation. What I'm interested in is what damage somebody who's sanctioned will cause our country as it develops. All right, that's my main concern. Now, tonight we're going to have a gentleman by the name of Mr. Thomas Jason. I want to talk to him specifically about the sanctions from the perspective of being a watchdog organization from the US that's looking at the situation in Guyana. And like you mentioned earlier, you said journalists should be credible. And in my estimation, none of the journalists so far have really stuck to credibility, because one, they have all spun this story to an angle where they're saying the government is using a lobbyist firm to get the US to do things to the Mohammed family, which I think is utter foolishness. All right. One, the sanctions came down before all of this nonsense. All of this was said, and which I read on Reuters almost a year and 7 months ago. So saying that anything to do with the PPP and their lobbyist is, in my estimation, piffle. The other aspect is a lot of people are saying, oh, they're paying the lobbyists to go do this. We should really pick up your phone and just Google what lobbyists do. All right? Lobbyists do not fabricate evidence against somebody. That's not their job. You do not pay a lobbyist to come up with an idea. You pay a lobbyist to go government to government regarding what? Laws, trade, agreements. That is what lobbyists are there for. So a lot of people on social media, because we seem to have uh, a class of individuals on social media for some reason that believe in a lot of false narratives without any evidence. And we are going to jump into at least gathering, putting a semblance of sense into this whole narrative that's happening right now. Not political, because again, I do not support any political party. All right? That's my thing. My thing is about my whole mantra has always been about the creating an enabling environment where the creatives can benefit from their IP laws, protection, and enforcement. That's my drive. I really don't care about politics and what politicians do. However, this particular case really affects everything in Guyana. Because if you have a sanctioned individual in a country that the US senators are calling him out as being in cahoots with the person next door who is trying to basically destabilize Guyana, Venezuela, is trying to do that. And the US is pointing out to Guyana that, hey, this individual who is sanctioned is a puppet of that person. I don't think this has anything to do with politics, but this has to do with us as a people looking at this situation sensibly and not putting politics into that game. All right, we're going to bring Mr. Thomas Anderson on so that, let us introduce him to the audience and, get straight into tonight's discussion. Good night, my brother.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate
Greetings,
it.
greetings.
All right,
Pleasure.
how you doing?
It's great.
All right.
I mean, so great intro, by the way. I'm listening to the show. I like what you guys have to say. You guys are good, man. Good work. Good work.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, so let's get straight into this whole because a lot of people are saying a lot on social media, and we really need clarity, not politicking, but clarity on what these sanctions would mean for Guyana and Guyanese.
Yep. So, first of all, like you said earlier, a few minutes ago, these sanctions came on the Mohammeds on June 11th, 2024. Okay, so that's over a year ago. And
Yes,
and when you and just to give the audience an idea of what it means when you get onto sanctions, it takes to get onto the OFAC sanctions, which is our Treasury Department. It takes the President of the United States, the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of State, the head of Homeland Security, all, and the Attorney General to all agree that you go on to the sanctions list. All of them
right.
do this. So they have to get together. So the bottom line is that the Mohammed's name was in the hands of the staff of all of our major executive agencies in our government. And after they all examined the evidence, they decided as a group. And by the way, this was the Biden administration.
Correct.
This was not Trump. So this is the Biden administration. You have to remember, the Democrats are a lot nicer to the region down there than the Republicans are. The Republicans have a very heavy hand.
Yes,
all
they
right.
do. Yes, they do.
So the Democrats who have a lighter hand got together and said, "Oh, these guys have to be put on sanctions." Well, that lets you know when that type of movement is happening in the U.S. government at that high of a level. This is serious stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
That it's that serious. So that's what the people who are listening and watching, that's the first thing you need to understand is that you just can't go on to these sanctions with OFAC just because somebody somewhere in the government decides to put you on there. This is not something where the State Department revokes your visa. This is not like that. This is way worse. And so when you get on sanctions, it basically makes it so that you can't do business in the Western world at all. If any Western bank institution has any of your money, they have to freeze it.
Yeah.
They can't travel to anywhere. They can't travel to our country. They can't travel. They risk being arrested if they travel places.
Yeah.
So this is a very serious situation that the Mohammeds find themselves in, and they've been in this now for more than a year because they got sanctioned over a year ago, but the investigation probably took 2 or 3 years. It probably took a while.
Yep.
So this isn't something that just happened overnight. All right. So because of that, they're in a position now where they have to try to get off of those sanctions. But the problem is the only way to get off of the sanctions is if the President of the United States himself takes you off. That's the only person who can take you off.
Correct.
Nobody else. The Supreme Court of the United States can't even review the fact that you were sanctioned. They can't even look at it. So once you're on, it's really hard to get off. And so what's happening to the Mohammeds now, I believe, from how I'm looking at the situation, is they had business partners, and it looks like from what our government and our elected officials are saying, business partners in Venezuela. And those business partners aren't going to be happy with the Mohammeds no longer being in business for them, because I'm sure the Mohammeds made them a lot of money because they they got caught smuggling 10,000 kilos of gold. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Okay.
That's a
And
lot.
so that's a lot that their business partners now are losing out on. And they're not going to just allow the Mohammeds just to retire and just walk away like that. So from what it looks like to me is the Mohammeds are now forced to get into the political arena to try to find a way to open up their shop again. And they're being pushed to do it by their partners in Venezuela. And that's why our member of Congress, Mr. Jimenez, called Azzuddin Mohammed a puppet of Maduro.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. That's the explanation for it. And so because of that, the nation of Guyana now is in a situation where you have elected officials in the United States looking at your political system and saying, oh, wait a minute, Maduro has his hand in the middle of their elections.
Yeah.
He's trying to sway the election to his benefit to create all this chaos. And now they are worried because if he's successful, Guyana can tumble into a disarrayed state.
It's just going to spiral. Yeah, it will spiral into a failed state. Not only Mr. Menendez, but another senator has also come out today, this afternoon, and kind of reinforced the same thing. That's Maria Elvaral. She said the same thing. Elvaral, right?
Yeah.
She said the same thing. And, you know, we as Guyanese, a lot of people just have this thing about, oh, well, you know, that's just the U.S. Some people say, well, you know, the U.S., some Guyanese will say, oh, the U.S. is the most corrupt country. So who are they to tell us that this individual is sanctioned, why we shouldn't support him? Well, let's put it like this. And I kind of simplify it for the layman who really are not understanding this. Guyana is not in a position of power. All right? We are less than 1 million people. So regardless of whatever delusions of grandeur and power based on what little oil money we're getting presently, I suggest people wake up, because if Exxon stopped giving us that revenue in the space of a few months, if somebody goes to power and this country is sanctioned, we're basically going to fall right back into that era of the 70s and the 80s. Because what a lot of people haven't recognized is that just in the last 5 years, we've really had any infrastructural change and infrastructural development. Roads, water, infrastructure, electrical is all being put in. That's all happening now. You could imagine if that capital that's coming in from Exxon ceased to come in. Not only that, if sanctions are put on Guyana, that means every bank in Guyana will be in that situation. I don't even think we would have a banking situation. Everybody who's sanctioned, you don't have bank accounts. I don't think Guyanese fully understand the ramifications. And I said this when a lot of people saw Odessa Primus come back from the US when she left. And she was trying to make it a funny thing. And, oh, why are you following me around? Am I a superstar, etc., which was utter buffoonery. Because really and truly, and I stated this on the live, I said, you are going to see, because based on my knowledge, I know that your assets are going to be frozen. Your bank account, you wouldn't have a bank account. There is no way that you can bank. This is exactly what has happened to Azzuddin Mohammed and his father. There's no way in the world they can bank anything. So basically, if they don't have that gold bullion to break down and sell to get cash, there is no banking system, no legal system that's going to operate with them. And any person who is sanctioned, and if Guyana goes on to that, we are going to suffer tremendously, because we are now at the stage of development. And to go under sanctions right at that point, when you're under that stage of development, for everything to collapse, it's going to go into utter anarchy. So let's use our brain, please.
I agree. And here's the problem, like that the country is facing right now is there isn't a really strong opposition right now standing up for the people.
Correct.
And then you have with the PPP, they are still tangled up with Azzuddin Muhammad, okay, because he was PPP. And
Correct.
so people still want to know, like, what's going on with this
Yeah.
situation? Why has it, and so there's all of this tension in the air. The election
There's a lot of tension. There's
right?
May Thomas, who was sanctioned as well.
That's right.
She was a PPP member.
Yep.
Of course, the Muhammad family, and then 4 other individuals were named 2 weeks ago.
That's right. That's right.
And,
right. And yes,
my thing is, why is the government of Guyana? Is there something that is preventing the government of Guyana from taking action on these individuals after the information was handed over to them by OFAC? And we're talking about all the individuals. We're not talking about just isolating the Mohammeds.
Mm-hmm.
I am talking about, because again, I'm not political. I'm not a political person, but I do know right from wrong. Yep. So if we have sanctions that have come down on the Muhammad family for other individuals, including Mayor Thomas, that was part of the government. She was a PS. Why aren't we seeing, first things first? I mean, if all this information has come down, why have no arrests been made? That's the first thing. Do they need to verify this information as the government? And in verifying this information, if you've seen a bill that says $75,000 from a car dealer, a Lamborghini car dealer, that is then proven to be false and just part of that payment, but the GRA is unable to seize the cars or the vehicles, what is really happening?
That's a good question. That's what
really
people want to know. This is what people want to know.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
President Ali and Mr. Jack Dale, they have to answer those questions.
That's right. And they haven't been answered. And so it throws everything into chaos. And that plays into Maduro's hands. That also brings U.S. interest and eyeballs in that really shouldn't be involved. See, my thing on this, the reason why I'm speaking on this so much like this is because I know that if U.S. officials who don't know anything about Guyana start getting involved with Guyana, it's going to be horrible. It will not be good for Guyana.
No.
And so I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh my God, this will cause. This is like a big giant hunk of cow poop in the hot sun, and all the flies are coming in. Okay,
yeah,
that's what's going on. And it's like, okay, this isn't good for the nation of Guyana. This can only go to a bad place. Correct. There's no way this can go to a good place. No. And so I keep looking at it. I keep saying to myself, well, the only person who truly benefits from this type of chaos is Maduro. Correct. That's the guy. That's who's benefiting. And so if anyone's watching and wondering, well, the U.S. are bad guys. Well, here's the thing. The United States doesn't benefit from chaos in Guyana at all. There's no benefit in it for us at all. But there's a mountain of benefit for it for Maduro. And so that's why I see the chaos and I'm saying, well, maybe the reason why the people within the PPP can't move on Muhammad and the other people who have been highlighted by OFAC is because Maduro is that powerful in Guyana.
Well,
he's preventing it somehow.
I'll tell you some things, right, that I know have an impact in Guyana. Before we had discovered oil, let's say 1994, 97, around that period, there was a deal that was struck with the Caribbean, which included Guyana, which is called the Petro-Caribbean deal. All right, where Venezuela basically supplied the CARICOM and Guyana with oil and gas at like nothing. Mm-hmm. All right. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand the diplomatic loggerhead that's going to happen there. Because one, you had a deal with that very country that helped to prop you up when your economy would have suffered if you had to go pay the oil prices internationally. Guyana could not have and still pay our debt. It would have been so terrible. There was no way we could have increased anything in terms of salaries for the government workers, teachers, all of that. There's nothing that we could have done there. That would have been a real stranglehold on the country. Now, we're at a stage where outside of the Petro-Caribbean deal, Guyanese have to look at what is called the geopolitics of what's happening in this region. All right. Now, really what the geopolitics here is, what we have to understand is Exxon was nationalized under Hugo Chavez in Venezuela during that period. And because of that, Exxon pulled out because their equipment and everything was seized by the Venezuelans. They pulled out. And the Americans then decided, based on all the treaties that were broken, because again, these were laws and contracts that were signed that were broken. And of course, the international treaties. This is one thing we have to understand while Guyanese be shouting, oh, Barrett and them go back and change the Exxon contract. It's not that easy. All right. So when they decided, okay, they're going to break that deal and seize Exxon's equipment and make it national, this is when the sanctions kicked in on Venezuela. Now, for your information, we're talking about the listening audience, Google Venezuela and the oil deposit that is in Venezuela presently. Venezuela has one of the largest deposits of oil in the world to this day. However, note carefully that Venezuela is also a failed state next door. All right? They're suffering tremendously. They have individuals, as Guyanese well know. We have thousands of them coming over the border. We're talking about Guyanese who went to Venezuela when Guyana was not doing that well. And they made children. We have Venezuelans themselves who are also looking for a job, prospecting so that at least they can eat. They're coming across the border. So this is the problem which I'm describing here. You have to understand this is it's a bigger picture. This is the picture of geopolitics. It's not just what has happened today that has created this situation, but what has happened in the past in the lead up to this situation. All right?
That's right. Yep.
We have to understand the existential situations going on presently as well, or else we are going to be in a mess very shortly if we don't understand what these things mean. And I'm very glad Mr. Thomas is here to kind of.
No, it's great. It's great because I'm glad that you're giving the full history here of, and it's not the full history. It's like the Cliff Notes version, but it's a great version, right?
Yeah, it's just the Cliff Notes, bro.
All right. So that's why this is so complicated. And here's the other thing, right? I'll even take you further back on this.
Yeah.
So that you really understand and your audience can understand the significance of these Cuban American members of Congress who are speaking out on this.
Please.
So the fight between Venezuela and the Cuban American contingent in the United States had started a long time ago. It was happening ever since Castro took over Cuba. That's how long this has been a fight. Okay. And so when Castro took over, all of these guys, they fled. A lot of them ended up being trained militarily by us, by the CIA. They ended up going back to attack Cuba through the Bay of Pigs, which, led to, I say it led to the assassination of JFK, I believe. And so at the end of the day, you have this blood feud between the Cubans under Castro and those who were run out of the country.
Correct.
And that blood feud caused the United States to become in the middle of that, right? And so what ended up happening was the Cubans here started to wield the power of the U.S. government in areas in the Caribbean. Why? Because we as Americans, we don't know anything about the Caribbean. We really don't know. Okay, I hate to say it, but we don't
But
know.
the thing is that everybody should have picked up on is that this region is mostly what we call the Latin American region.
Yes,
All right.
that's right.
Those Cuban senators have a lot of reach
Big
into
time.
the Latin
Going
American
back, going all the way back
Yeah.
to when Castro and them were fighting. Okay.
Correct.
And so these guys have been fighting this war between each other, and Venezuela's in the middle of it. Guess
Yes.
who else is in the middle of it? Guyana. Why?
Guyana.
The Guyana was one of the first 5 nations to recognize Fidel Castro as the leader of Cuba.
Thank you.
So this is
Thank
how
you.
far this goes back.
This
And
goes
so-
back.
And so when you have these members, these Cuban American members now saying, "Oh, we have a problem with what's happening in Guyana because one of these guys is a puppet of Maduro," what they're saying is Guyana now is in the active part of their war they've been having between each other going back decades.
Correct.
That's what's happened. Guyana is now in the middle of a huge fight that's been.
It's such a serious fight. I'm not going to. Sorry. It's
Yes.
such a serious fight. I mean, do people even remember that the U.S. put a $25 million reward on Maduro's head?
That's right.
This is a very serious thing.
This is deep. This runs deep. It's a blood feud. There are people involved in this fight with each other who will never forgive the other side. Okay, there are terrorists in the middle of this. There are drug lords in the middle of this.
Exactly.
Mafia guys. Everything you could imagine under the sun is in the middle of this fight, and it's been going on for a long time. So now Guyana is in the middle of that, on top of all of this other stuff. And when I saw that, I said, okay, I need to speak more on this, because the people of Guyana need to understand, when you're in the middle of a blood war which has been going on for decades, okay, it won't be good for your country.
No, it would not.
And it doesn't matter what happens. I just know when you get in the middle of a blood feud like this, you're going to be hurt. You're going to be collateral damage.
You're going to be the collateral damage. And this is why this particular conversation is so dedicated to this, because it's not about saying one party is better than the other, but really this conversation is to wake up both sides to realize that if we do not come together, forge some measure of understanding between both parties about this particular issue, especially when it comes to an individual that has clearly been outlined as being a puppet who can be manipulated by another person outside of Guyana, that can create serious consequences for our country.
That's right.
So this is something that the PNC has got to understand. The PPP very well understands this situation, because they're the ones that are not trying to exacerbate the situation, but are trying to say, if Mr. Muhammad has a problem with GRA, please go pay your bill. All right? They have not, which they should have, taken the evidence from OFAC, taken the evidence from the DEA, taken the evidence from the FBI, and moved on everybody that was sanctioned. It will then create another stream of chaos. So you understand what's happening here. It's a play. And if you don't play wisely, we can end up like, for example, you remember I asked this question, I'm going to ask it again. I want my audience to tell me in the comment section, identify a black and brown country that has oil that is at the level of Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates, Dubai. Could you name me one let's say one African country that we know African countries got oil. Are they at the level of any of those countries I mentioned?
Nope, they're not. They're not.
Now, Guyana, that has now discovered its deposit of oil with no experience at all, zero, does not understand that getting that amount of wealth so quickly, if you are not seriously security conscious, you will be destabilized
Yes,
very quickly
that's it.
because
That's
foreign
it.
players gonna want to come in
That's right.
and they want to access what you have.
That's right. That's right. And I'll tell you, when they look at the scenery, the first one they're going to zoom in on is Azruddin Muhammad.
Correct.
He's the first one they're going to zoom in on because they know that he's the one that's already been smuggling. He's been caught. They can get him.
Mhm.
That's the thing. And that's what I'm trying to relay to people is that when you look at this situation, the outside world is looking at the situation, and the one they're going to target is Azruddin Muhammad. That's who they will target every single time because they will see his situation and say, we can corrupt that entire nation. We can
Correct.
do so many bad things through him because he's a bad guy. He's sanctioned. Whether people believe he's a bad guy or not, his supporters think he's a great guy. They believe it's all made up. That's fine. I'm just telling you, for the people on the outside, they don't see what you guys see. What they see is a man who's under sanctions, who was just labeled by a U.S. 2 members of Congress as a puppet of Maduro. That's what they see. And when they see that, they see easy pickings. They see, we can take advantage of this.
And you're talking about a senior senator saying that? 2 of them saying that.
That's right.
We have a problem, and we got to wait.
House of Representative members, by the way, is there House of Representative members?
Yeah,
but that's the big problem is that he sticks out as, and you know, Irfan Ali, President Ali said today that he's a security problem for the nation of Guyana.
Yeah,
he is because of this, because all of these bad actors on the outside are looking at this situation and saying, well, if we can get in through his problems, we can do a lot of damage. We can get away with a lot.
If we can use him,
that's
on the ground in Guyana.
Yes, that's what they want. That's what they will go to him first, because who do they want? They want someone that they know has stolen from his own people. That's what a smuggler's done. And so he's already labeled himself as someone who's willing to steal from his own people. Once you've done that, once you've been labeled as that, that's how the world is going to treat you. I don't care. Everyone in Guyana who supports him can see him as someone else.
Everybody in Guyana could support them, and it's less than 1 million people.
Yes,
it's way less than 1 million people.
But these people on the outside,
are going
they're
to say,
saying, "Hey, this guy steals from his own people. That's who we can do business with." That's what's going to happen. Okay. And that's what's starting to happen. Maduro is the first one to plug in, apparently, but there will be more.
From my recollection, right? Now, I am young. I think I'm the youngest on this platform, right? I'm just 30 years old. So I always like to go back as old as I am, right? From 5, 7, at least from the age of between 7 to 10, when I had good knowledge of what is happening within my community. I would have heard that the Muhammad's family just deal drugs. Keep in mind, I'm now 30, right? So within the last 20 years, if I'm looking at the age of 10, within the last 20 years, he have been a part of the PPP government, right? One of the most important parts, I would believe they would have been played, because the father was there forever, right? The younger Muhammad,
he's a member of the party. They're members of the party playing a role in what? When you say play a role, which role did they play?
So hold on. The fact that these Muhammad family was able to become billionaires back then, is insane. Right?
How so? How so?
So my questions would be, how did they get to that level? Right? Let's
All
pretend
right.
we don't know all the sanctions and everything, all the information now. Let me look from since back then.
Mhm.
They're into every single business in Guyana,
Mhm.
right? Of course, the gold is one of the biggest.
And the reason they were able to accumulate that amount of money was because there's a lapse system that's very
Mhm.
old, and because they were able to do, as the sanctions mentioned, corrupt several individuals with that money to get this smuggling going. Because it's not only Guyanese that were corrupted by this particular situation. We're
Correct.
talking about Americans as well that
Americans
were
got
corrupt.
corrupted. That's right.
Correct.
That's right.
So I am looking as a young Guyanese, because now is politics time. This is my first time going to be voting in the country ever, right?
Okay.
I
Mhm.
live in the US. I've been here since the age of 18, right?
Mhm.
So I now have experience from America, how America politics works, how politics works in general. So when I'm looking back at Guyana and I'm seeing Mohammed, well, Azadine is running for presidency and
Mhm.
having a bit of understanding whereby he could use this position, if he do ascend to that, and kind of cover himself off, right? But then, so what I need you to explain, right, Anderson, is majority of the educated Guyanese live overseas like myself. So the rest that left back is the ones who been behind the class, and this is facts, right? They haven't been able to get the knowledge that I was able to get, unfortunately. A lot of people still didn't went to school. I got neighbors within my own community, older folks who haven't been to school. They dropped out since primary. So they haven't been able to get the knowledge to the extent of the basic stuff that you need to survive, right? So everybody hustles.
Yep.
Now, Muhammad, back a couple months or years ago, they had a video. Are you in the mafia? And he's been hopping out of helicopters, riding boats, riding jet skis, showing the big mansions, all the cars and everything. And that one song keep playing, are you in the mafia? And I'm in America, so I understand a couple American movies and think how they function. And when I look back, I see the same thing, right? But this is before sanctions, so
The same kind of behavioral patterns.
correct, the mafia behavior, right?
Exactly.
Because again, I would have heard since growing up, these people just do drugs. So everybody, I think,
Incidentally,
across Guyana would have heard the same thing. Can't just be me alone.
and
Because
Well,
I
from the
remember
out,
going to
well, from the
school.
outside, and I've been looking at this now
Mhm.
going back to 2008, 2009.
yeah,
From the outside, we were all of the opinion that the Mohammeds were the worst part of Guyana. That's what we understood as outsiders.
this is what I'm trying to explain to the Guyanese audience, that the perspective that we have here on the ground is not the perspective of everybody else.
No,
Everybody else has a fair understanding that that behavior is criminality, while a lot of people will condone that type of behavior. And I've said this on social media with no apology. I said, if we are to look at things seriously, a thief or somebody who breaks the law, whether they break the law to get $1 or they break the law to get $50 million, they're still under that label. Once you steal or you go about nefarious means to get what you get, there is no changing that to say, okay, well, we're going to wash that away and make it legit. That will be then if you want to go into money laundering at that point, because how you got the funds in the first place is ill-gotten. So it couldn't turn into a legitimate business. That means you're washing the money.
Yep.
It's called money laundering.
Yes. Yeah. All that's going on. But here's the thing that amazes me. And I know that that Martain Al-Ameen, I know that he said that, a lot of the people who stayed are not educated, but a lot of people are educated there. There were the two gentlemen who resigned from the Win political party when Azzuddin Mohammed took it over. They bounced immediately. And I look
That's
at both of those.
Mr. Ramkaran and that other guy. I remember
Yeah,
that.
and I looked at them and I said, "Whoa, these guys are impressive guys, actually." Okay.
Yeah.
There are a lot of impressive people on the ground. I think the problem is they're so busy carrying so much of the load, right? Because the country itself it's not organized right. And so you have so many of the people who are smart, who are educated, they're carrying the load of 4 or 5 people. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what they have to do because the resources are not being distributed properly in the country. And so that I think is the bigger story, is that the people who are on the ground who can do, and there are many, many, many people who can, they're being sidelined, or they're being pushed into sectors to do things that don't really matter that much.
Correct.
There isn't an elite political class that can organize the country in a way to get the boots on the ground, to get people to strap up and then get organized and to start focusing in on what builds a nation. And you start with education, for example, on that. And so that's what I see with Guyana as a problem, is that there are a lot of people there available, educated, ready to go. It's just so disorganized.
Yeah. And I agree with you totally. And that disorganization has to do with the system that we run under.
Yeah.
The system is antiquated. It's 1954. Those laws are from way back. The political opposition, like you mentioned earlier, that's really supposed to be holding the government accountable, is not doing their job.
Yep.
They are walking out of parliament when there are parliamentary sittings. They're not looking at, for example, the Auditor General's report. They're not looking at the system of auditing every single ministry and updating that. Because again, when they were in there, they had an opportunity to do that.
Yep.
And because of, this is one thing I want to point out, because the way our Constitution is formulated, we need both sides to change the legal framework. It's called a referendum. Without the changing of those laws, the system will still have the very loopholes that we are trying to plug. It will still have those loopholes.
Yep.
So if we do not look at the system itself, because a lot of Guyanese don't realize it's a system that is frustrating, not the government.
That's right.
The system needs to change, upgrade the system, and that has to be done by both sides. It cannot be done by one.
That's right.
Keep in mind, the government controls that system. They have the actual power to change that system in general. And this is why I mentioned
this is why the opposition is also in parliament, Martin. Because
correct. So remember, for me, both sides is government, not just the PPP, right? And this is why one guy needs to remember. This is why I mentioned the education. You could have been in school all your life. That don't mean you're well educated, because we have the same opposition walking out to parliament today. And those supposed to be the big lawyers of the country. You understand me? So you could be well educated, but don't make sense at the same time.
I think from what I'm hearing you're saying, and I think it's accurate, this part, from what I hear you saying, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think what's happening is the system itself, the education system, the governmental system, even the business and political system,
and legal system.
They're so outdated. They're actually they're misplaced in the era we live in now, and so they're unusable. All of it's unusable, right? And that's why everything is seems so crazy.
Yeah, and you have stuff that's popping up now. All right, there's stuff that's popping up now that the archaic laws cannot cater.
That's it.
To deal with.
That's it.
All right.
Yeah.
So you have a conundrum of stuff like it's crazy because you can't.
That's why people ask, "Is Guyana a real place?"
Exactly.
It's like,
this is why people ask if we are a real place. You know, but I mean, I want to emphasize this to the audience. Let's not really look at this, what's happening to Guyana presently, as oh, this side is done wrong or that side has done wrong.
Yeah.
Let's not look at it from that angle. But let's look at it from the angle of how do we come together to make this place that we have the place to be, the place for us, because we have a very small population that any major corporation around the world has more employees than we have people in this country. And
Yep.
all of our people are not working. They're children, they're elderly. All right. So we have a working population, maybe just about 420,000 people.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So there are companies that have way more employees than 420,000 people. All right. So we need to think about how we are going to really move forward, because people are saying we want change. We want to move forward. But I think in saying we want change, think we want to change the system.
Mm-hmm. That's
All
right.
right.
That's
Think
right.
we need
Yep.
to change the system.
Yep.
So
That's
that
right.
that system is more advantageous to the population or the
Absolutely.
populace.
That's right. That's what it is. That's what
what
it's
we
all
need.
about. That's what I'm excited to see. I think it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to happen.
I plan to be one of those persons, all right, that
Mhm.
is going to be talking about this, because we do not need destabilization. We do not
No.
need chaos in the lead up to our regional and general elections.
Yep.
These are things that, if Guyanese really focus on them, burning our streets, our roadways, and all of that, and the infrastructure has just been put in, looting, all that kind of stuff, that does not benefit us in any way. A matter of
Yep.
fact, that chases away our foreign investment. Because once destabilization in this environment happens, everybody who is even thinking of coming in to invest is going to hold.
Yep.
All right.
And
I
the
mean,
people who do come in to invest are going to be bad actors who want to make the situation worse and take
correct.
advantage of it. Yep.
Yep. Yep.
So it just gets worse and worse. It gets progressively worse every day. And so
Yep.
that's why the beauty is that Guyana is not in a tailspin like that. There's still an opportunity, right, to get this right. And the window's closing, though, because
Yeah.
when you've got these members of Congress from Miami starting to talk about it, that's when they talk about Guyana. What they're really doing is they're moving in
Mhm.
on making moves on Guyana. All
They're
right.
setting the stage
Yes.
to make the moves.
They're
They're
gonna make some
setting up
moves.
the stage to make the
Yes.
moves.
That's
And
not good. That's not
no,
good.
and
This is
I
not
mean,
good.
I don't know if people. I was one of the things that I garnered a lot of experience from on these issues. Right. I was a young lad at the time when the Iran Contra scandal came into being with Oliver North, where he was selling arms around the world and all that kind of stuff to Nicaragua and all this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at it religiously because CNN covered it night and day, and you could literally sit there and look at the questions that he was asked by the Senate and all of that. You got to see it from everybody's perspective, how and what he had done, and how the effect of that, what he had done, affected South America,
Mm-hmm.
Central America, um, the Middle East. His actions, and a lot of people, I mean, we really have to, like I tell people, history is a teacher. It teaches you what not to repeat. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to look at history and make conscious decisions not to repeat what we have seen in the past.
That's right.
Now, Guyana is coming out of a situation where, one, we were heavily indebted. At one point in time, Guyana was a HIPIC nation next to Haiti. Guyana, by a miracle, has now gotten this oil reserve potential to be an oil producing nation for a very long time, at least for 25 years. The idea that I would be, most propagating in my country is not one of division, but one of coming together so that everybody benefits, because we have such a small population and there's so much wealth that's going to be coming in, not only from the oil, but from the investment coming into the space.
Yep.
That the government has put a local content bill in place to handle, to help facilitate Guyanese to get a piece of that pie.
Yep.
Not only the investment, but we also have other natural resources: gold, bauxite, manganese, and if people don't know,
rare earth
material,
probably lithium too.
Well, what I've heard through the grapevines is that Guyana has a deposit of uranium.
Yes, that's right.
All right.
The Iranians have been after it for a long time.
Okay. Now, the American government has vested interest in Guyana. Regardless of what Guyanese on the ground here from a certain section of society will say, oh, we don't care about America. We don't want visa for go there. We don't care. However, just think about it for a moment, that if Venezuela decides to annex Guyana, there is nothing that we could practically do, because one F-16, I have witnessed a war before, and this is something I try to explain to Guyanese. Guyana is in no position to get into a conflict with a nation that has F-16s.
Yeah.
You will be obliterated. Even before Americans can send a war or an aircraft carrier to help Guyana, we will be wiped off the face of the map if that lunatic next door decides this is what he wants to do.
Yeah.
People have to understand this. Our 5,000 troops is no match for one fighter jet. We will be annihilated if that lunatic decides he's coming over here.
That's right.
So I suggest,
and by the way, and the only people who will defend Guyana are the Americans.
Exactly.
Trust me when I tell you, the Chinese will see that and say, "Go ahead, Maduro, fine.
Go ahead.
We don't care.
The Russians.
We don't care.
Russians
The Russians. Oh, go ahead, Maduro." The only ones are the Americans.
Exactly.
So that's the issue here, right? Is that the only friend to Guyana that's keeping Guyana together right now is the United States. That's it.
It's the United States. And I want this to really, regardless of what opinions, Guyanese have about America. You went to the embassy, you didn't get your visa, so you vexed. Somebody for you got turned back, so you angry. That kind of extremely myopic thinking is going to run us into a bigger problem, which all of us will be in a position of weeping, wailing, and gnashing of teeth. That's it.
So let me go back to education a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, while it is important for everybody in Guyana to understand that, and even outside of Guyana, is we are lost. We're at a standstill. We now get the 4-lane roads that the president and the team commissioning. So we never drive all of these lanes before. It's facts, right? We had one road straight up, straight down, straight across. So now we got directions to go, right? So traffic-wise, it's facts. Education-wise, it's also facts, because now we're looking at the PPP, right? And saying, well, you guys had power all the time, but you also had these people under your sheets, right?
As in, you had the Mohammeds in the party.
Correct.
As members of the party, just like the PNC had Abdul Qadir, who was charged for trying to blow up JFK as a terrorist.
That's right.
He was a member of the PNC. However,
right.
What you have to understand is that membership to a party doesn't mean that the leadership of the party knows what your inner workings of whatever it is that you do.
I don't believe that, brother. I'm 30 years old. I'm not stupid, brother.
Okay, so you're saying that Then hold on. You're saying that Aubrey Norton and the leader of the PNC, including David Granger, knew that Abdul Qadir was planning a terrorist
Brother,
attack on.
if I have anybody, you can't be a leader, right?
Mm.
And this is why our people that we got enough road now don't know where to go, how to cross, and what to do, right?
Mm.
Because we seen the opposition, the PNC, we seen the PPP. We've only had the two. We've known who and who being a part. You can't tell me you as the leader didn't had any bit of clue. Remember, since I was 7 to 10, I heard the Mohammed's been dealing drugs. You can't tell me Jagdi or any deal to share and all of these people didn't had a clue or even heard about it, just like I heard. I was going to school and I heard about it.
The
So
thing
you
about
can't
the world,
be a leader. Hold on, Malachi. You can't be a leader of a party and tell me
Mm.
you had no clue. So
But
this
the
is
funny thing-
our
but
population
let me just say
problem
this. Let me just say
today.
this.
Mhm.
Knowing or hearing something, all right, is not what you hear or what you know. Actually, is
They
what
could
you
prove.
prove, what you can prove.
I
So
think
all the
by
members of
having
the government-
sanctions now, the US was able to prove.
All right. No, all of the party people could have heard that. Where would they have gotten the proof?
It's just like how Mayor Thompson was in bed with them. You can't
And
tell
they
me
did not know.
you didn't
Okay,
hear it.
They
and you
did
couldn't
not know
about it.
that she was actively helping him. Or else, let me show you what those sanctions would have said.
If no one
Hold on,
leader
hold on,
didn't
Martin.
hear
Let me
about
show
the
you what
brother,
the
is something
sanctions would have said.
wrong.
No, let me show you what the sanctions would have said.
He's right.
If any information went higher up the chain, for example, if Mayor Thomas's dealings had anything to that implicated the Minister of Security, Robeson Ben, they would have mentioned him.
I mean, we know Ben sleeping, brother. You see, I am young, me blood hot, right? So I can always come out hot. Brother, I don't believe it. I could never believe it, right? That you had no clue.
Mhm.
Now, all right, everything came out in the public now. We
Right,
still see nobody being arrested. Nobody's been held accountable.
right.
Now, so much drugs passing through, even before my time.
Mhm.
I just like the Mohammeds that is known as the drug dealer growing up. I know Guyana as the transport shipment.
A
for drugs.
transshipment point.
Good, right?
Mhm.
So that is what I heard. Now I can't hear the coming to America, and this is the education that it's important to go back to, right? Because
Mhm.
once you're educated to a level, remember, just like in the music business, Malachi, where we say the producers and the artists them reach a cap, and once they
Yeah.
reach that cap, they don't know what to do. So they have the knowledge of being an artist, but only in Guyana. They don't know how to go to America, how to go to the rest of the Caribbean and
To market.
maximize their profits.
Mhm.
Same thing with politics, same thing with the education. You could stay in Guyana, become the best of whatever you want to be, and be the top, but you only know that. I personally believe, and I will always advocate for that, the moment you leave Guyana, and this is where social media comes into to help we now, which is why we're more confused. The moment you leave Guyana and go somewhere else, your eyes open big, just like I went to Jamaica and I was watching it. You tell me we had ghetto on this, compared to that, it didn't make any sense, because then I realized Guyana really and truly have no ghettos. Because I was in a ghetto in Jamaica, and it was
Thank
nothing
you.
like that.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's a very important thing that
Yes.
Guyanese don't even recognize about this country.
Right. By the way, I say this like I'm as an outsider. I noticed that. I was like, wait, there's no ghettos in the whole. That's
No,
crazy.
There is no
I'm
ghetto.
blown away, and it's just like
There
I
is
tell people in
absolutely
Guyana, you guys
no
don't know
ghetto.
how you guys are great people, like good people.
Bro,
And we
I have
proof
never
of
gone
it.
to a ghetto in my life, and I have been to real ghettos. I've been to Soweto. I've been to South Africa. I've been to Soweto.
No.
That's a ghetto. We went to Jamaica, Martin and I. We went to Tivoli and those places, Waterhouse. Those places are ghettos.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
Guyana has no ghetto. No
None.
ghetto. How do you have a ghetto where people have beds, chest of drawers, flat screen TVs, and all of that? You're living in a small space. That's not a ghetto.
Yep.
You're in a small space, but you have
Yep.
all your modern amenities
Guyana
There.
is a beautiful country with
I'm
so
telling
much
you,
going
you go
for
to
it.
Soweto, you
It's
walk in
amazing.
feces all the time.
Yep.
There is no way to go because there's no toilet and it's a sprawling ghetto for miles. There is no garbage collection. There is no toilet. Nothing. That's a
All right.
ghetto.
Mhm.
And
So
Guyanese never had that in their life.
that's right.
Let me dial back in. All right.
Yeah.
Guyanese people are now lost because we don't want to choose the PPP because they have been there and they have been aiding and abetting. Anybody could say wrong, but I'm pretty
Aiding
sure
and
if you
abetting
ask
has
Google
to
a
be in
certain
terms
list
of
of
law.
questions,
Aiding and abetting has to do with law. And there's no legal system that has said that they have aided and abetted.
he went there, he buy there, he grew there, aiding and abetting, brother. Don't matter how politically correct they try to fix it up, he's been there, right? It's just like I grew up in my mother house. I buy and grow there. That is my mother house at the end of the day. You
That's a big
understand? That's
difference.
base.
That's a big difference. Your mother gave birth to you and she
Brother,
nurtured you. I
remember
don't think that the PVP gave birth to the Mohammeds and nurtured
no,
them.
no. They may not give birth to the older Muhammad, but the younger one, oh, for sure. That is how he had the brilliant idea to become president,
No,
right?
no.
To cover his crooked
I
self
really don't
today.
think so. I really don't think so because if that was so, he would have had a much better relationship with the president. If
Yeah,
that
but
was so,
you
he
can't
would have
have
had a
that
much better
relationship
relationship.
just like modern father, modern children is fall out and the mother stay at a certain age. You're a big man, you're smelling yourself, you got caught me house. That is exactly what took place, brother. The Azadin Muhammad believed that he could have garnished all of this wealth, right, from Guyana and continue to be successful. Whether the PVP government or the government in general now realizing, well, hey, he was crooked and we got to get rid of he, I am still looking on and I'm saying, well, there's no arrest being made, right? Everybody or majority of the people is running behind him now because he is kind of coming out as the underdog. We don't know.
When
No,
you
hold
say
on.
majority, because I mean, I pay attention to social media. I follow this guy. I follow what's happening. And I really don't see any majority of people. I see a lot of people who are uneducated about a circumstance.
Remember, education
They
was the
are,
first part we start.
yeah, I know. They are just around because let me tell you what I know happens in Guyana. Big social media buzz doesn't translate into anything. All right? It doesn't translate into zero. We have artists, and I'll just make a reference here. We have artists that have thousands of views with zero sales. You know why? Because none of those 1,000 people or 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people are invested in buying any of that music.
The difference,
It's the
brother.
same thing. It's the same thing with him. He may have
Difference.
hundreds of
No, the
thousands of
difference is
followers,
the elder Muhammad been doing groundwork.
but
And as the uncle came out and said the other day, the
has nothing
younger
to do with
Muhammad
money.
is making
He
use
had
of
his
that.
charity. That's his charity that he had.
Just like the
And
uncle said,
but
the younger
let me explain
Muhammad is
let me explain this.
capitalizing on that for political gain.
Even if he tries to do that, it's going to backfire because of their religion and their religious stance. Islam outside of Guyana, nobody, and I can tell you right now, I can call the Jamaat in Trinidad, where Shaka Abu Bakr was and leads the Al Muslimin. And there is no way they will condone that, what he did. There is no sheikh, no cleric that will condone what he did
Correct.
as part of Islam. A matter of fact, in Sharia law, if you are caught stealing, your hands are chopped off.
Off with it. Yes. Off with it.
And if you steal again, they'll chop off another part of you.
So this is where the confusion comes for the people. Majority Guyanese doesn't understand all of these things that we're talking about.
Well, they need to get educated. This is the thing.
Well, the bigger issue is, and I think Martin's trying to point this part. This is what I think Martin's trying to say is that the PPP has a corruption issue, a corruption problem.
Not just the PPP, the government in general.
I know the whole, but
everybody.
I'm sorry with it, but I'm just saying from them and then all the way through there's a corruption problem in the country, and that
Correct.
corruption is what creates the weakness and the cracks between the people so that no one can come together.
And
That's
they
the
can't
problem.
arrest these guys. They
That's
cannot
it.
arrest these
That's it.
people
That's it.
because you could clearly see apparently like somebody holding some secret for somebody, and we playing musical chairs is not to reveal.
Yep. Yep.
So
Because
That's
it
what's
might be
going on.
legal, it messes up. And if the other one reveals, it might mess up over here. So we're playing the musical chair.
That's
now
right.
as elections approaching, a lot of people wouldn't be voting or they'll be voting for the wrong side.
That's
And
the
that is
problem.
the truth.
That is the problem, though. Because like you and I had this discussion, Martin. We're stuck, as Guyanese says, a rock and a hard place. Or let's put it like this: we're stuck between two devils. So we have to choose the better of the two devils. All right? You have one devil that if you go that way, Guyana done. Basically, it done. And then you have another devil that if he goes in there, you could possibly squeeze the neck of that devil and say, hey, what happened? You got to operate it what we want. And this is why we say the opposition is not functioning as an opposition. You need brilliant minds as an opposition to go up against my friend who I used to work with, Barrett Jagdale.
Yes.
You need a mind to go up against him. You need a mind to go up against Ashni Singh. You need people who understand mathematics. You do not need people that they can't calculate simple numbers.
Yep.
You cannot have learned professional lawyers make statements that are totally erroneous to a population that is uneducated. You are misinforming that population.
Yep.
And you know what's funny that you mentioned that? My nephew and even my daughter, 4 years old, is doing more than less than. And that was our problem. To be doing more than less than, my son is 7. My oldest son is 7 years. He's doing more than less than. And to have a brilliant lawyer, right, politician, come out and can't identify which is more than and which is less than for the previous election, and had our country in confusion.
That was shameful. That was shameful.
You see me what my problem as a young man? Because I now, voting for the first time, like many others, don't know who to choose. Because I can't choose the one who telling me, oh, less is more. And I know it didn't make sense. Right?
No, that's facts, Martin. I mean, listen, I understand, and this is why I think this conversation tonight is very important. Most important for the younger people who have not got the historical background, like myself and Mr. Thomas here. Looking at the situation, though, I would advise most young people. Again, I would just go back to the reference I made just now. We're literally stuck between two devils. And really, you got to choose the lesser of the two evils to go with. Because if you choose to sanction the character, we done. And one of the things that's amazing to me is that the opposition leader, Aubrey Norton, has not come out with a definitive statement that says, I support this, or I do not support this.
Which is why we can't trust them, brother. We can't even go up on the opposition side. Because even in the political sphere, in Guyana directly, we have an issue whereby people like to vote race. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Usually, at least for the older folks, because the younger generation ain't really going for that.
Nah,
the older folks would say, well, oh, this is the black party, so we can go with this side. But imagine me in a house where my mother and my grandmother still alive, and my grandfather saying we're still alive, and telling me we all going out with green jersey. I remember a piece of time during Granger government. Me entire house, I visit back home. Me entire house full with green rags and green flags, and even the Christmas time, the fairy lights was green.
Green.
Right? And now I'm looking like, hey, we putting on no lights this year.
Loyalists.
Well, I'll tell you from what I'm listening to you guys, and I've listened to a few other people. I think here's where the disconnect is. And there's a commenter, Paul Chin, who a lot of people compare Azzuddin Mohammed to Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump was convicted of all these crimes. He's a criminal guy. Here's the problem with that comparison. So
Yep.
for people who are inside of Guyana, they view the Mohammeds as great men. A lot of, not everyone, but that's his supporters
But
view
a
him.
fraction of people in Guyana believe he's a great person.
Well, I mean, the supporters of Azzuddin Mohammed consider him a great man, put him on the level of someone who can be president of the nation, like a Donald Trump type of situation.
Yeah.
And when they view him and they see, and that what they're thinking, I believe, is that the rest of the world respects him like that too. Like they'll see him on the outside and say, oh, you know what? He's Guyana's version of Donald Trump, so we'll respect him, and he's a good guy.
Without realizing that Donald Trump's history is not Azzuddin Mohammed's.
That's right, and those two men are totally different.
Totally different.
And here's the thing: people have tried to go after Donald Trump and prove that he's a weak guy, and I'm telling you now, he has proven he's not a weak guy.
No.
Okay, he got attacked by the entire U.S. government for years on end, and the dude survived all of that and became president again. That's a tough guy. That's not, that is not easy to do.
No.
Azzuddin Mohammed is not that guy. And on top of that
constitution.
No. And on top of that, people on the outside world do not respect the Mohammeds as upscale, upstanding citizens. That's not how the outside world views. And so people within Guyana can believe that, hey, we don't care what the rest of the world thinks. We love him, so that's all that matters. That's not all that matters. Okay? It matters when what outsiders see when they look at your country. If they look at your nation and the leader they see is Azzuddin Mohammed, what the outsiders are going to think is we can take advantage of that country easily. That's an easy thing to take advantage of. Now, I have been very critical of Bharat Jagdeo over the years. Why? Because I do not like the corruption that I've seen come from underneath his leadership.
Correct.
I have been very critical of him on that.
We have been critical of
with that said, when the outside world looks at Bharat Jagdeo as a leader of Guyana, they don't look at it as, oh, that's an easy guy to push over. Oh, we can take advantage of them easy by taking advantage. That's not how it's viewed. Nope. The outside world views Jagdeo as, well, that's a serious guy. And if you're going to go mess with, exactly. If you're going to mess with Guyana, you better be careful because that guy, he can do something to you. Be careful. Okay. Now, and what I mean by do something, I mean political power.
Correct.
Jagdeo actually wields political power. How? Because he has partnerships throughout the world internationally. Other world leaders who will pick up the phone and speak to him. Others. And that's right. Okay, so he has that. Azzuddin Mohammed does not have this.
He will never get that level of close.
That's right. He can't pick up the phone and get support from this place or that place. That's not going to happen. What will happen is if he calls and he needs help, on the other side, what they're going to say is, well, how much are you going to pay me?
Exactly.
Why? Because they know he's a gold smuggler and they want some of that gold. That's the first thing they're going to want to know.
Nothing short of a terrorist attack coming in.
But that's the problem here is that from the inside, it looks one way. But the outside world is looking at this and saying, man, there's something wrong in Guyana for those people to think that that guy, Azzuddin Mohammed, is a legitimate candidate for president.
First things, I mean, let me just interject here for a second and just answer Mr. Paul Chin, who says, how did he arrive at that power? Now, just to give you quickly a quick breakdown of how Jagdeo got to that position, right? First, he was trained in economics in Moscow, came back to Guyana in 1992. When the government changed from Hoyt to Jagan, he was appointed as in the inner workings of the party, all right, of the PPP. Then he was appointed as junior minister under senior minister Asghar Ali. where he worked for quite a few years. All right. He then ascended in the PPP, which is in his party. All right. As he ascended, when Janet Jagan was president, she demitted a part of her time to him. So he got part of that experience being a president that was not elected, but was given the opportunity to step in to fill a gap because she did not continue the tenure. Then there was elections. When people saw what he was able to do within that short space of time, which was Guyana was heavily indebted. He found ways through economics to pay Guyana's bills off. Because if you don't pay, you keep sliding. Your debt increases. Your interest rate goes up. So he was a prudent manager when it comes to the economic part of it. All right. He then became the president. Guyanese voted for him twice to be the president. When he left presidency, and again, I do advise a lot of the young people, you have a phone in your hand, please do Google this stuff that I'm talking about. When he left the presidency of Guyana, he was appointed the chairman of the Caribbean Basin Initiative under the IMF. If you don't know what that means, he's responsible for the Caribbean and Latin America. All the loans and all the monies dispersed to this region, he was the person that oversaw all of that. That means that his level of clearance. Also, when people say, oh, he's a thief too, he's involved in drugs, he's involved in that. You're telling me the International Monetary Fund and other organizations who were linked to them didn't have any evidence for years until now? The feds, the DEA, none of them have any evidence on Mr. Jack Dale and his so-called nefarious dealings. Who is this guy really? Does this sound logical to a population of people?
I'll always question a bit of that, but go ahead.
Hold on. Could he possibly slip through every single investigatory body and be squeaky clean? Because have we seen any major investigative body say, this guy may have some dirt outside of Guyana? We're talking about Guyanese talking their thing.
No, to be fair, I'll always question that. Just like how the PvP had Muhammad under them and didn't know anything, it would be same brain thinking to think that America and the rest of the nation believe that Jack is the best
so, because
in the bunch.
Regardless of whether they're your friend or not, they're going to be investigating you. Once they're here, they investigate you.
They will investigate you, but
they investigate you all the time.
What? Here's what Jack Dale, I believe, mastered. Okay, in my opinion, he was smart to do this. Okay, and this is what I've said to people. So, being a government watchdog, I have to make a choice as to who I target, right? I have to choose. Do I go after this politician here or that politician there? How do I make my choice, right? Well, the way I've always chosen is I made a decision early on, and I said, okay, what I want to do for my career, if I'm staying this watchdog work, is I want to be able to look back and say that the work that I did helped get rid of the type of corruption that makes the population of people lose faith in their government.
Correct.
That's the type of corruption I go after.
Yeah.
The blatant, in your face type of corruption that actually makes people, when they look at it, it just brings them down, and they can't believe in their government anymore. Correct. That's the type of I've always gone after. What Jack Dale did and what he has done, I believe, is his corruption has been above that level of where people, if you see it, it won't be something where you say, oh, he's a black stain on Guyanese politics. You won't say that. What you will say is, I can point to some corruption. For example, I'm the one who found that Abdul Ahmad had shipped tons of building supplies to Guyana to build Jack Dale's mansion. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's corruption. But the problem is, it's not a black stain corruption. It's not a blatant corruption. It's a very high level corruption. And that type of corruption, other governments don't care about. Okay. That's what he was able to do. His corruption
care about
is
somebody
high.
doing building material together.
That's what it is. His corruption is high enough on the level that other governments are like, fine. Okay. What can't be agreed to by other governments is going hand in hand with a politician who's embarrassingly corrupt. Someone where the entire world can look at it and go, oh, what an embarrassment to their country. That's the problem that Azzuddin Mohammed has.
Exactly.
Is that the type of corruption he's been hit with and accused of is so blatant and so horrible that it actually, him being a part of the political system and the election, actually brings the country down.
Exactly.
It brings the country down. Okay, because it makes it look like this is a third world banana republic where the only people who get ahead are the biggest crooks. Is what it looks like. And so that
exactly.
And I think that's the issue when it comes to corruption in Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
The people of Guyana have to realize, and the government people have to realize, look, you're going to have corruption. You will. There's corruption in the United States.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. But what you have to do is design a system so that the corruption doesn't tear down people's faith in the government. That's the key.
Doesn't spill out in such a manner that it really looks like, as you mentioned earlier, totally blatant in your face stealing. That's happening right in front of you.
That's what has to be avoided at all costs. And that's what Jack Dale avoids. Okay. His corruption is at a higher level so that it doesn't drag the entire country down in a way where outside nations are saying, well, that's an easy target. We can take advantage of those guys. That's what he has done, I believe. And so that's why my criticisms of him have been on the things where, and this is my biggest criticism, that he has proven to me that he knows how to rise above that low level stuff.
Yeah,
since he knows how to do that, that also means that he can also eliminate it, but he doesn't. And
this is
that's
right
the
there. Right there is the problem. I have said that before. He knows, and the funny thing, I mean, I know him years ago, and there are things that he discussed that I kind of remember his thinking pattern. You're working with a group of individuals. You can't, as a leader, if you see them do something wrong or a little shady, you can't just dash them under the bus. It doesn't exactly work that way.
Mm-hmm.
If people don't know, you can't just throw them under the bus. They did something and like, listen, if you do that again, it's under the bus. It doesn't work that way because you're going to lose your support base when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what you have to do is like what me and Martin had suggested to him, which was to ensure that especially these government ministries, they are aligned with the PMS system of operations, which is performance management systems, so that you have accountability from the top down and you have accountability from the bottom up. So when, for example, you have somebody like May Thomas in Home Affairs, she could not have sided or done anything illegal with Mohammed because there would have been so many other people that she would have had to check with or would have had to check her work, that she could not have signed off on anything without involving a whole heap of them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where a lot of the problems lie, because one, the archaic system keeps things in a centralized area. For example, you know this, Martin. To get a gun license, You think I sit down on the minister desk? It cannot go to anybody else. They can't sign off. It's the minister himself. Once those things are entrenched in
No, no,
our
no. So let me fix that. Let me fix
modus,
that quick. Let me fix
mm,
that. So it starts from the commander's table, right, in your
mm,
region, goes to the commissioner, they approve it, goes over to the home affairs, which is the minister's table,
mhm,
and goes through the board. So they have a board system whereby they vet you and everything based on everybody recommendation that it already passed. You kind of a PMS system, if I ain't gonna lie, because it's hot in my head right now, right? But
mhm.
it proved that it's working in a sense, right? Whereby you have to go through all these people. So I can't just walk in there today and say, hey, minister, me use friend or I have some money,
Mhm.
sign off for meeting. You
But we know that
understand me?
was, but we do know that that used to happen.
It still do happen in some cases. It
You
still
got
do happen.
money, your thing is speed up. And
Correct.
this is exactly what Mr. Thomas was pointing out, that the
Correct.
levels of these corrupt acts happen in certain areas because the system, like we mentioned earlier, the system is the major problem. If we had a performance management systems where the checks and balances do not lie in the hands of one individual, that he puts his signature and say, I done, that's it, that's punto final. And he had 20 other people that were checking that very thing.
And
He
this
could
is
possibly
where
be exposed.
this is
Yep.
where moving forward, especially in this political climate today, with
Yeah.
elections coming up, is where majority of the young people is looking to hold the older folks accountable and more so the system accountable. Because just like how we could come up with simple ideas, high
Mhm.
level educated individuals supposed to be able to do the same or consult with others to get the same done. And because we're
Yeah.
not seeing these change fast enough, because when we move in, especially with social media, things changing. We learning about America every day. Something happening in America. America comes in, Congress, we fixing it. Right? We seen Trump come in. Here's what happened. Executive orders down the board. I pushing the system. We gonna run all the laws as possible. We fixing it. We don't see that in Guyana. I personally
Because,
haven't seen any trying to fix anything.
because Martin, again, our politicians, and I really don't like to make a comparison with Guyana and America, but our politicians do a particular thing here in Guyana. Um, they all live in this space of they do the a lot of demagoguery. That's what they do. All right. They don't actually come out. I'll show you one of the politicians that actually he comes out and says it in your face. And this is why he's the most hated politician, and that's Jagdeo. Because when he sits there on a Thursday and he outlines exactly what their party's policy is, he is not framing it in a way that I'm trying to make it palatable for you who ain't like me, so that you could say, "Oh, well, yeah, but he doing." No, no, he doesn't operate from that space. He's operating from a space where this is what I know based on my knowledge, and he's a pretty smart guy. And he is saying, "Listen, I'm going to implement these strategies with the help of my ministers." You and I both know a lot of them fail a lot of times in implementing their strategies. Some of them we give their praises, and some of them we call them out for not really implementing the strategies. But he sits there, like Mr. Thomas said, he sits there and he sees all of this stuff happening in. Why you think in his one of his previous press conference, not last Thursday, but the one before that, he mentioned that a lot of people feel that they're going back as ministers and members of parliament in a next term. But he is going to be looking at, he's going to be evaluating their performance in this term with Ali. My thing is not only he doing the evaluation, he's also getting information from the American government on who is doing what, because he can't investigate his own ministers either. And there's no way they could tell me with all that amount of oil money hitting the ground, corruption ain't happening. All right?
It's happening. It's happening.
It
You're
is
right.
happening.
Yeah.
What needs to be done, though, which again, I got to throw this now, this sack of woe on the opposition, is because they're in the government too. They are part of the parliamentary system. Instead of having a spine and debating properly along the lines of getting the correct information so they could disseminate that to their constituent and also to the rest of the Guyanese public, they are using the opportunity to play games and to be demagogues, which should not be happening, not in this situation. This is a very, very, very serious situation for Guyana to be in, where they have individuals. Is no longer one family anymore. It's several individuals now that are sanctioned. Are you kidding? We have to wake up.
And by the way, I will say this though, this is actually, these are good developments, the sanctions and everything.
Yeah.
Because in the past, this was going on and there were no sanctions.
There were no sanctions.
Total wild and free. So at least there's movement happening. And by the way, these sanctions wouldn't have been possible without the help of the government of Guyana. So they have had a hand in this. No matter how you want to cut it, they've had a hand in it. And look, from what I've seen as an outsider, you know, and I've said this over and over again, the key, and you've said this also tonight's show several times. Yeah. The key is both parties have to come together. They have to come, both sides have to come together. I'm not saying they have to come together on everything and agree. No, but there are basic things, operating items in the nation that the two sides have to come together on, and they've got to work together to get it right. Okay. That's what the nation's missing. And there's too much fighting and bickering over stuff that doesn't even matter half the time.
Correct. Yeah.
This is the time for people to start saying, you know, I'm not saying let bygones be bygones. What I'm saying is that there's a future to be had here. Yeah. But it can only be attained with both sides together. Correct. It can't be attained with one side going one way and one side going the other. Yeah. There has to be a fusion here in order to attain this beautiful future that is available. Yeah.
Another thing that I just wanted to mention quickly, a lot of people haven't thought about the scenarios after elections. And I have. If, and this is a real possibility because of this moving and shifting of individuals leaving the opposition, going over to the ruling party, and then they're forming other little parties. Now, what that is going to do is fractionalize the vote. Let me explain to Guyanese. That fractionalizes the vote. And when it's time to get to parliament, you just may have a situation where now the PPP has 33 seats. If they get more seats in parliament, they would have no need for the opposition to be there.
You could very well go home. Absolute majority.
They will have the absolute majority at that point in time. All right? If they get 35 seats out of that 65, it's trouble. My thing is, the opposition is there not to pull down the ruling party. They are there to ensure what the ruling party says they're going to deliver to the citizenry in a manner. They are supposed to be there to ensure that it's tailored well. Yep. The accountability is there. That's their job. Why are we paying these?
Well, here's where they have to start. From what I understand, the rule on the oil money is the parliament is in charge of that oil revenue. That's who's in charge. Sir. Yes, but they haven't been in charge of it. So
because they walk out.
One of the big problems.
They walk out. And I mentioned this on my radio show when Martin and I were talking about it. I'm like, these guys, we have the national debate. The debate in Parliament going on about the budget and other things that are happening in Guyana that needs to happen. I was there, incidentally, when the debate on the Amila Falls issue came up. And this was years ago. All right. And excuse me, I literally was amazed at the opposition's behavior on the issue of the Amila Falls. Why? Because we're running on generators and an old system that has been there since colonial time. A grid that has been there, an electrical grid that has been there since the birth of this place. Now, you're going to put up objections to having a hydroelectric plant built in Guyana, the land of many waters, where you can make use of the natural resource of the running water to generate power. You're going to stop a project like that, but then make an argument after the fact, because a lot of people don't seem to realize, hey, Guyana is not remaining the same. We have factories being built. We have a lot more homes. All of these things got to get power. It can't be the same old GPL grid. We've got to get megawatts running in if we're going to be an industrial country. So we have to think hydro. Why did the opposition even stop that? Why haven't their supporters even looked at that issue and said, why would you want to stop that?
They don't understand. Keep that in mind. They don't understand. So what I think is gonna happen to Guyana, I hope it don't, but I think it's gonna happen. Just like how Haiti, like how barbecue would have rised up and said, here's what happened. Enough is enough. We've seen all the politicians playing games. We tired. Same thing happened in Trinidad, right? The Muslim brothers them say, well, no proper policies, nothing for we benefit. We tired. I foresee that happening to Guyana. The young people, brother, like me who blood hot, got cheering for feeding them thing, will not continue to sit down and watch both sides of the aisle play we call it the musical chairs with our lives. And that is fact. I personally refuse to see that. And this is why I choose to go back to Guyana. And in any way possible I could make a change, I'm willing to implement that. And I know there's a lot more people. I know people in the military, in the police service, who would get up and say, we tired. And I'm telling you now to advise the Guyana government. There's people in the military. Because remember, I come from a military mindset, how I function, right? Just like how we got the old system, I is from the old biblical times. So we ain't going for certain stupidness as men, as fathers, and as son of the soil, who got see we mother punishing, fighting for your pension at the NIS still in the hot sun. We ain't going for certain things as young people. And of course, with the technology adding to our value, we now seeing a different life. Oh, we not. This is why we could all say we want to be like Dubai. Of course, we want to be like Dubai.
When?
But we are not going to get there if oppositions continue to walk out of parliament on a. I think it's every single parliament sitting I've watched. These man walk out.
You know what is like totally funny though? When you mentioned the whole Dubai thing, right? I wonder if people really realize what kind of money Dubai gets versus Guyana's pocket change money. All right, guys, we talking trillions of US dollars to Dubai versus Guyana 1 point whatever billion, which is pocket change. Okay. A matter of fact, a sheikh, a prince in Abu Dhabi or somewhere really has that money that that transforms our entire economy. They have that in their bank account that they can spend to build something in the desert. So we have to understand where our position is. And I think that Ali really was using the Dubai scenario to inspire our people. All
we
right?
done inspired, brother. We want it. This is the problem there today.
This
we
is what
want
I said.
it.
He used the Dubai familiar thing to inspire the Guyanese. But one of the things I do believe that they need to, as the government, and I do believe they're going to win again, they need to look at the human resource capacity building aspect of it. And this is something that you and I have spoken infinitum on our radio program. It starts by first looking at the total revamp of the creative industries, the laws that govern that in particular. Because once you start to look at the creative industries in the IP law division, remember everything that exists in front of you comes from the mind and is on the IP. We need to come up to date. And when we say that, and I'll make short this. For example, we have a sector in Guyana where the creatives can grow but are prevented from growing because of the system. The system is one of piracy, where television stations pirate material from the US, where radio stations pirate music by downloading it and playing it on their radio stations. They are not legally. They don't have permission to do these things. If we bring the copyright laws, updated ones in place, all of these things have to be cut out, and you will then facilitate the growth of the creative industries in Guyana. Because the creative people, the singers, the artists, the actors, the cinematographers, the photographers, the designers, the architects, everybody that comes up with something from the mind benefits from their craft here. Their material is also protected here. And I'll just make this short now. Sibyl's, a Guyanese restaurant right there in Lefferts in New York, would love to come to Guyana and bring the pepper pot patty to GT. They will lose the right to control that pepper pot patty anytime they came here. Because everybody they will find it. And even if they can't replicate the exact recipe, they're going to use it and they're going to call it the same name too, because you can't protect it. Henceforth, we have these problems if the government, and we're talking about both sides, have to look at the problem. And we have literally spoken to both sides on this issue for a long time. But guys, we've been at it for a minute. The time is really going. So your final words, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Thomas.
Yeah. So thanks for having me on again. And it was nice meeting both of you guys.
Likewise.
I have to say, I believe Guyana's going in the right direction. I said earlier today, I have a lot of faith in the people of Guyana. It's not an easy situation growing so fast like this. This is hard, right? It's hard. It's just really difficult.
Yeah.
But with that said, I believe there's enough support internationally around, good support. And I think people like me, government watchdog guys, the media people, I think we're keeping a pretty good eye on some stuff here and trying to reveal what's happening in real time to the people on the ground. So I'm hoping, with all the well-wishing, with all the friends, with everyone hoping Guyana does well, I believe, most people are. I'm hoping that people can grab onto that and somehow, some way, the parties can come together, find common ground, and get what needs to be done for the people of Guyana. This is the time to do it. They just have to find the will, and I'm praying for that, and I'm hoping for that, and I'm advocating for that. So that's my final message, man. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yep. Martin?
Well, as always, as you know better, you do better. And I think we would have shared a lot of information tonight with a bunch of people, right? Especially on how to direct yourself. Because like I mentioned before, we're a bit lost. So programs like this, of course, is to guide you into a direction. Not for dictate what you could do and who you're voting for, but give you a little guidance. And as you know better, you do better. Inside me. So I expect the people of Guyana to stand up for better at the end of the day. That's the least I expect from you. I don't like a fight by myself.
Well, I have looked at this situation for some time. Um, I know that the problems that we face are not isolated just to the government um, or just the opposition. It's a system problem that if we do not correct that system, it's going to at some point break. And we don't want uh, a system that is broken. People have absolutely no trust in it. Um, and it will degrade to a point where at some point it will just be anarchy and chaos. We don't want that. So this again is why, like you said earlier, Martin, why we do these programs to really educate and show a perspective, not one of division or divisive behavior, but understanding where we are uniquely as Guyanese and where we are on the totem pole in the world. We have to understand where we are in the world, not be delusional to believe certain things cannot happen to us. All right. I'll leave it there for tonight. But of course, before we wrap it up, Martin, the disclaimer, please.
And the disclaimers read: the views, opinions, and statements expressed on a conversation are solely those of the individual hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of our advertisers, Majestic Music Radio, Gem Radio, or Gem Networks. The content of this show is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Listeners' discretion is advised. Neither the station nor the network assumes any responsibility or liability for the accuracy, completeness, or validity of the information presented. All content is subject to change without prior notice. But as always, we're professionals. Google it.
Google it. Mr. Thomas, so good to have you. We're hoping that we can have you back again.
Yes, sir.
When we
Absolutely.
have some other people again. We're gonna keep this going as much as possible as on the lead up to elections, because we really want to inform the nation.
That's right.
Mhm.
And
I'm
so
here.
that at the, yep,
I'm
at the end
here.
of it, they make wise decisions. All right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
I'm
we
here.
want.
I'm
We
here,
don't want
man. Anytime you
bickering.
guys, I'm on.
Yep.
You guys are
Yep.
great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. We don't want the bickering. It's not about bickering and fighting. It's about finding the solutions. That's
That's
what
right.
we're all
Correct.
about.
That's
All
right.
right. Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody, for all the listeners, the viewers. Check us out next Tuesday. Of course, check us out tomorrow morning from 8 to 11 on our syndicated radio program across the globe on Majestic Music Radio, on slamfm.co.uk, on my exclusive radio on Cut and Clear Radio, 96.7, 102.3, Triple R Radio and Studio M. Of course, until tomorrow, blessings. Have a great evening.
One love, guys.